Thank you for take care. Okay, take some pictures. I can't see. Is that? That's not a good spot. And then towards that spot. Because it's zoomed in to be the podium. So like on the side, like you normally are. Yeah, but I would watch out for that camera there. So maybe also the right hand side of the picture.
Kevin, hi. Will I be in your way if I'm here?
Yeah, like you said at some point, the information monopoly has been broken. Town clerk who is also our FOIA officer. And you like it? Whatever your preference is.
All right. Well, thank everybody for coming out. We appreciate it. We are really excited to be here today. This is one of those times when we don't get to share good news always with New York State around corruption and transparency, but today is certainly different. I want to start by thanking a couple people for having us here. For starters, obviously, the town supervisor who was kind enough to partner with us from the start on this project. Additionally, we have the town clerk, Altadonna, and Councilman and Brodo as well to be here with us. And it's important that we see not just the town supervisor here, because one of the narratives that we're going to be talking about today is the importance of proactive transparency and how that is not a top-down solution. You need buy-in across the board for that, and that starts in many cases with the person who's going to have the most face time with citizens. And so frequently, that isn't going to be the town supervisor. That's going to be his staff. That's going to be someone like the town clerk and frequently council members. So again, thank you guys for coming out today and being a part of this. It's very important that the buy-in is across the board. So with that, my name is Brandon Muir. I am the executive director of Reclaim New York. And we're going to be talking about something today that we don't get to hear a lot. This was an important milestone in the New York Transparency Project, and it indicates an important turning point in the town of Oyster Bay and their focus on embracing proactive transparency. Citizens and public officials, for the first time, are coming together to discuss things like transparency, corruption, citizen engagement. But instead of indictments and finger pointing, we're going to illustrate how a small team of public officials can make a huge impact. Now, as many of you know, the New York Transparency Project started 2 years ago. The long-term mission is to improve the culture of transparency in local government. To do this, we've created a platform where both public officials and citizens can come together and engage in a more productive way. Too often, the shadowy corners of mundane government processes allow millions of our taxpayer dollars to get flushed down the toilet. It's not a surprise that 93% of New Yorkers believe that there is a serious corruption problem in New York. But if those New Yorkers are being honest, they'd admit that we lack transparency, but they'd also admit that we lack a real demand for it. No longer can we as citizens pay lip service to the idea that our role isn't citizen-driven oversight. For far too long, in fact, we have outsourced our civic duty to others. The New York Transparency Project is the platform that's turning the tide in this fight. Through a partnership with the International Open Government Specialists at DINTRA, we established a comprehensive index of online transparency and accessibility indicators for local governments. From the comfort of your couch, you can now engage with government on a very personal level. For starters, you register as an evaluator. After about 15 minutes, you go through the 29 indicators listed, and you conduct an assessment of your local government. It's the definition of citizen involvement. Reclaim's platform, which reaches out to every school district, village, town, city, and county in the state, allows for comparison and analysis across the board. But as with any crowdsourcing platform, we need participation to make it work. In this case, we're talking about citizens and public officials. And let us not forget that just last year, Reclaim New York filed a lawsuit against the town of Oyster Bay because we didn't have that participation. Under the previous administration, records were illegally withheld from Reclaim New York. We asked for the town's checkbook, and we were repeatedly ignored. Without transparency, we, like other citizens, were only left with one option: to take our request to the courts. Fortunately, the courts supported the very basic idea that public records be just that, public. But much has changed since last year. Back then, we had a different town supervisor, and now we have a new one. Back then, we had a demand for transparency, but we very clearly lacked the supply. I'm excited to share that under the new leadership of Supervisor Saladino in the town of Oyster Bay, a belief in supplying transparency now exists. Today, we announced the town of Oyster Bay is the first municipality in New York State to adopt a vast majority, more than 80%, of Reclaim's online transparency and accessibility indicators for the town. Through consultations with our transparency team, the town of Oyster Bay has moved from meeting just 9 out of 29 indicators to 23 out of 29 indicators. As you can see, This was done in just about a month. I mean, this is the definition of dedicated staff time to embracing proactive transparency. Meeting minutes, permit allocations, and directories were already online, but the town has now posted the current budget in a machine-readable format, all tax and fee schedules, and ethics guidelines, among other critical records. And while there is always more work to be done, the town has taken an important step to establish a culture of proactive transparency. We must also remember, though, that proactive transparency is not a one-time action. Celebrating this effort is exceptionally important, especially in this state. But the next 3 months, the next 6 months, and on will be just as important. And that's where the role of the media and the citizens and civic associations comes in and is so important in holding others accountable. To fortify this mindset, Reclaim will continue to train and consult both citizens and local officials on the transparency roadmap. Each must play a role in responsive governance. We will publicly recognize other good actors like the Nassau County Controller and the town of North Hempstead, who have also taken important steps to dedicate their belief in transparency. And on a broader scale, Reclaim New York remains committed to working with the thousands of government entities across our state in the same way that we've worked with Supervisor Saladino's team. We will continue to prove access not only to spending data, but the everyday information that government can do to work for us. And we will continue to do this because the relationship between the taxpayer and the government needs very serious repair. We must strengthen that trust if our state is to get back on track. Because it's much easier to do that when citizens meet public officials who understand that transparency is not a hope, it's not an idea. Transparency is the law. Supervisor, thank you for your leadership in this, and we're excited about this partnership.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming today. I'll ask my colleagues to step over this way, please. Our town councilman, Lewin Brodo, and our town clerk, who handles our foils. Please allow Brendan to step up. Please step up. Please step up with us. And our town clerk, who handles our foils, Jim Altadowna. Thank you for coming today. A special thank you to Brendan Meir, Executive Director of Reclaim New York, and his entire team for the introduction, for your kindness, and for recognizing the town of Oyster Bay is fully 100% committed to transparency. It gives us great pleasure to be recognized today as the leader in online transparency and accessibility by Brandon and his stellar organization, Reclaim New York. When I took office just 3 months ago, I promised to the residents that this great town would have a new day, that there would be the dawn of a new day in the town of Oyster Bay. And from that point forward, we have proven that we are running things quite differently. My administration has made great strides and has accomplished much over the past 3 months to establish this new reality, including introducing sweeping ethics reform initiatives to attain the highest ethical standards of any municipality, and we completely changed how the town of Oyster Bay does business. A great example of this was the town's recent unprecedented open work session that was held in response for proposals, RFPs, for the operation of food and beverage concessions at our town parks and beaches. During this work session, attended by the public, by the media, and live streamed through the town's website, the town and the public heard over 18 hours of proposals from organizations who responded to the town's RFP. I am truly proud of the fact that this process resulted in unprecedented transparency, but equally as important, the town will receive over 5 times the revenue than it did with past contracts. It is my belief, and I have no doubt, that this work session will serve as the model for other municipalities who wish to open the doors of government and ensure complete transparency. This morning, it is my distinct pleasure to announce that the town of Oyster Bay has become the first municipality in New York State to work directly with Reclaim New York, a fully independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization committed to government reform and accountability. Reclaim New York's Transparency Project is a new initiative aimed at reviewing, evaluating, and increasing online transparency from local governments and municipalities throughout the state of New York. When I took office, I promised to regain the faith and trust of our residents by ushering in a new era in the town of Oyster Bay, one of the highest ethical standards and complete transparency. And that's exactly what we have been attaining. When Reclaim New York approached the town about this transparency initiative, I viewed it as the perfect opportunity to show just how serious we are about transparency reforms. It was clear the town should be subject to the same rigors of this very thorough, detailed, and graded project. And as a result, the town of Oyster Bay has become the standard bearer in the state of New York. The town of Oyster Bay has become the standard bearer on transparency throughout the entire state of New York. The town was not only the first to submit to an evaluation by Reclaim New York, but also the first to commit to adopting the indicators they have identified to create the most transparent government to our residents. The most transparent government to the residents of the town of Oyster Bay. No other local government in New York has been as focused and proactive as the town of Oyster Bay. With this project, Reclaim's goal is to ultimately evaluate each and every local municipality in New York State on their online accessibility in different and dedicated categories. 29 categories to be factual. That's very in-depth. 29 categories. When the Long Island Press Club did their evaluation, they sent 2 requests for FOILs to every municipality. That was it. Reclaim New York, in their in-depth evaluation, graded and evaluated municipalities on 29 categories. Evaluation markers such as municipal transparency, fiscal transparency, access to information, and contracts are just some of those markers that were reviewed and evaluated. Under my direction and under the platform established by Reclaim New York, the town now posts the rules for contract bidding, instructions for submitting a request for proposal, a list of current RFPs, and we have added a section on the website that contains in-depth details concerning information on our newly redeveloped ethics guidelines, practices, reporting, and other inclusive measures, many other measures. In volunteering to become the first municipality to work with Reclaim, the town of Oyster Bay has scored an impressive score, a nearly 80% overall grade. A nearly 80% overall grade, with some categories as high as 100%, making the town of Oyster Bay #1 in the state of New York at this point. We are very proud that at this point, the town of Oyster Bay leads the entire state of New York in transparency. And we also serve as a model to encourage every other municipality to come on board with Reclaim New York, to try to achieve these levels. That's what we're looking for. Complete transparency, and to be the model for every other municipality to follow. We look forward to continuing to work closely with Reclaim New York and utilize not only their effective tools, practices, and protocols, but also their vision and their guidance in moving forward with this worthwhile and important project. And quite frankly, it feels very good to be the model of transparency for the rest of the state. The town of Oyster Bay is the model of transparency for the rest of the state of New York. I promise you that when I came to the town of Oyster Bay, that we would tremendously and dramatically change the way things are done. And today, once again proves that we are achieving our goals of transparency and ethical reforms through actions and not promises. I ask you to refer to this chart that Brandon and I will stand alongside of. You can see this is how we're charting our progress. This is the Transparency Index report, working with this fine organization, Reclaim New York. This is the transparency evaluation, and this is over time. So we started here in the very beginning of February. By February 10th, we decided we have to be part of this. We had a grade of 20.7. By March 30th, we had a grade or an evaluation of 31%. By April 7th, again, continuing to put tremendous ideology, tremendous focus, and a tremendous commitment on following the guidelines and creating the highest level of transparency. By April 7th, we had achieved a 51.7%, and by April 25th, almost an 80% grade, 79.3. And we're not stopping there. We're continuing to move forward. We're leading the pack in the state of New York. We're providing the model for leadership for every other municipality to get online with Reclaim New York, to get online behind the town of Oyster Bay, and competitively try to surpass us if possible. This is how it should be going. This is the right thing to be doing. We made the commitment to change the way the town of Oyster Bay does business, and with the help of this great organization, Reclaim New York, and with the commitment that this administration, that my colleagues in government and our employees are following, we are proving that we are reaching our goals of transparency with actions and not promises. Thank you, Brandon Meir, and thank you to all of the staff at Reclaim New York, because we are making a difference. Now I'd like to open the floor for questions.
Question for Brenda. About the participation in this project. I was looking on the site yesterday, and it looks like there are 1,599 different municipal entities that are listed.
Yep.
And there are 25, or as of yesterday, there are 25 that actually participated, which means less than 2%
Yep.
participation. How can you judge what the level of transparency is for Oyster Bay or any other municipality when the participation rate to date is so low?
Sure. Well, we can certainly judge the rate of transparency with the town of Oyster Bay because they were the first one to get on board, dedicate staff time, dedicate leadership focus to this. Part of the model that we have to understand here is that if Reclaim New York flies around the state like Superman and tries to correct transparency everywhere it doesn't exist, we're not actually creating a sustainable demand for it. And that's where you really need the buy-in from both citizens and public officials. So while we could set interns aside and try and assess every locality in the entire state, we would be doing a disservice to the idea that this has to be citizen-driven with buy-in from public officials. So when we put this out during Sunlight's Foundation Transparency Week, it was about a month and a half ago, and we put this platform out, and we had national leaders in the transparency discussion say, this is a model that could be used across the country. But we shouldn't be imposing upon local government officials to do this, right? We need local government officials to buy in and do it because it's the right thing, and that's what we've seen here at the town of Oyster Bay. Since we started working with them a couple months ago, we've had other officials across Long Island step in and say, hey, we're interested in to see what's going on. Their score went up. How did they do that? And the beauty of this indicator is that everything's online. It can be driven by citizens. It can be driven by public officials. But the indicators that we laid out and the analysis that exists is a comprehensive index of what it means to be transparent online. And it's very black and white. You either complete the indicators or you don't. And in this case, of course, they've completed, upwards of 80%.
If I may add to that, this is an evaluation that's very honest and very transparent. If we were the only municipality to respond in all of New York State, we still have reached 80% of the indicators. If there are 25 responders, we still have reached 80% of the indicators. If there are 1,500 responders, we still have achieved 80% of these very in-depth indicators. So it doesn't matter how many have responded. What is a wonderful aside to this is, once again, we're getting the town of Oyster Bay back to the leader in the state. We're the leader in our facilities, in our services, and now we're the leader in transparency. And that fact is a provable and rateable fact, no matter how many entities respond. But clearly, working with this great organization, we realize there'll be a motivation now. We're setting the bar to say, come on board with them. Do what we're doing. Respond and work with them. It's not your first grade that counts. It's where you arrive at. And that's what we're doing, increasing transparency and continuing to embrace the indicators. So the readers of Newsday, the readers of our weekly media, those watching this online and throughout the media, have to understand the fact that there are 25 or 1,025 is not the factor. We still rate an 80% of very in-depth indicators, no matter how many are responding. And quite frankly, as the leader in the state, we're motivating others to get on board.
Ted, if I could add one more idea to that. When was the last time on Long Island we saw local government officials competing to be the most transparent? And I don't remember that happening. And we actually have a case now where we've created a market, and this is the idea of this share platform where citizens and public officials can come to one place and engage with each other. And we've created a market that's actually driven competition. And you're going to see over the next couple of weeks, we'll have more of these events where local government leaders have said, you know what, we're going to get on board and we're going to do this. So I would be concerned if we had a town of Oyster Bay hop out to first place and everyone said, you know what, that's okay, we don't care. But it's actually been the opposite. So we want to continue to increase that competition. And I think when you come back in 3 months and 6 months, and I highlight that because this isn't a one-time thing, and this is something that we have to look for that growth. But what we try to do is measure it. And so we're going to be able to say the average entity is starting at 9 of 10 or 12 or 13 out of 29 indicators. But where are we in 3 months and where are we in 6 months?
About how you create this index that each item is given equal weight. So for example, Town of North Hempstead, they have on their website, which I found through the link on Reclaim New York, that they have an interactive budget. You can go, it's an interactive feature, you can go and you can search through by different categories. They have a check register that's online. But they have a lower percentage.
Sure.
Even though, say, if you just post something there's a link to the Canadian Open Government's website that shows the FOIL law,
Right.
that'll give you the same, I guess, like 3 percentage points as
Right.
posting a check register. They're not really equal amounts of work. Do you think that this index should reflect the amount of work that goes into each of these, or is it fine just to have each one be weighted equally?
I think with any assessment, you have a subjective and an objective part. And part of this assessment is what do citizens really want? So, if you don't have the ability to leave your house and you want to engage government, you need to know what the phone number is to the records access officer to get a FOIL. You need to know what the email is. For other people who are looking into how my tax dollars are spent, they're going to weight the idea that they want to see how the money is spent. And the idea of North Hempstead's model, what they're using through OpenGov. It's an amazing platform. But I think part of this is what we realized when we sent these FOILs the first time around, is that there was a lack of transparency, but there was also this lack of demand for it. And so when we started assessing how do you fix this, we realized that local government officials need a roadmap to understand what are those 20 or 30 things I should be doing. And North Hempstead's a great example. They were an early adopter of a really good technology that allows their citizens to see how the money's being spent. And I think there's a lot of business intelligence gained for local government officials when they have something like that. But the core of this organization and this project is to improve the culture of transparency in local government. And you really need a broad swath of indicators to assess the culture of transparency. And I highlight, the work that the supervisor here has done, because it's not just a one-person show that makes this work. You need buy-in from your town clerk. You need buy-in from council members. And you really need buy-in from the staff, because they're the ones that are going to be talking and interfacing with citizens every day. So the idea around these indicators, some being worth more, certainly everyone has an opinion on what should be higher and what is harder to accomplish. But I think the focus of this program is to really lay out what a transparent culture would look like, and this roadmap does that.
Question for the supervisor.
Yes. If I could just add to that, that's why Reclaim New York is so credible, because their swath of indicators is so broad. They did a lot of work to think it through. And to get an 80% grade when you have so many indicators speaks volumes of our commitment and the factuality that we are achieving such a high and tremendous level of transparency. They've done an exceptional job by being so in-depth, not only on the individual categories, but by providing so many categories. The Long Island Press Club, which touted its review, sent 2 foils to every municipality. So if you're a very small government that has very few employees, a very, very small village perhaps, that only has 1 person or 2 people, and that's the entire clerk's office, and they're out on maternity leave or taking care of a sick relative or maybe are out themselves, that would slow down the process and hurt their grade, which isn't a real indicator. I applaud the Long Island Press Club for taking interest in this, and I hope everybody in the media will be taking interest. The more coverage we get on today's news, the more other municipalities will be motivated to come on board and work with Reclaim New York and increase their evaluation and increase their transparency.
Question for you, Mr. Supervisor. The 29 indicators include 6 that Oyster Bay has not done. One of them being contracts $10,000 and over. Another one being the check register. Are these things that will be on one?
The town of Oyster Bay is working toward complete transparency. Some of these items take longer to get online because of the sheer volume, but we are working toward being fully transparent, and the fact that we've already achieved 80% transparency in this extremely in-depth evaluation speaks volumes about our commitment to our residents and to the process, as well as to working with Reclaim New York.
But will all contracts, 10,000?
The town of Oyster Bay is in the process. Some of them are very lengthy, and so it takes additional time. It's more difficult for very large municipalities and very small municipalities to comply with everything, because in the case of the larger municipality, there's a tremendous volume. It's very voluminous project. In the case of very small municipalities, they have less employees, very few employees. So there is a bell curve on that aspect, but even with the voluminous nature of our contracts, the town of Oyster Bay has scored the highest grade thus far of any of the municipalities, and it's quite frankly about evaluating the 29 as opposed to competing against each other, because no matter how, as was said earlier, no matter how many municipalities are in the mix, we're still at this 79.3%, virtually 80%, whether we're the only one evaluated, whether there are 25 evaluated, or whether every single municipality across the state is evaluated. It's still a point-for-point evaluation, and we have worked very hard to achieve this high level, and we're going to continue to be the leader and work very hard to reach the leader, to be on the leaderboard of municipalities across the state. Our residents deserve it.
But is it the intention of your administration to get 100%?
It is the intention of our administration to be completely transparent in all of the ways, and we're working toward that.
So does that mean that it is the intention of the administration to get 100% score?
We would love a 100% score. Are there any other questions? Yes?
The guidelines on freedom of information, that's separate, Brandon, I guess, to you and also to the supervisor. This town has a lot of gadflies who constantly ask FOIL requests. What if they say, yeah, they're good at telling us how to get information. Most of the time, we don't get it. But you can't really measure that.
We have a town where we are committed to all of our residents, and we appreciate any resident who would like to add constructive information. And we will continue to work with every resident. But when you have gadflies, as you mentioned, who might try to stop the wheels of government, including opponents of the town and its residents, that makes a score of 79.3 so much more telling. That increases the impact of what we're trying to do here. We're not going to allow people who would like to see the town to fail to get in the way of our commitment to transparency and our commitment to our residents.
Yeah, if I could add, in the state of New York, there's no organization, to my knowledge, that has filed more FOILs than Reclaim New York. So as experts go in filing FOILs, we rank up there. I want to point out two important pieces of information around filing FOILs. The idea of accessing a public record is to the core of our democracy, right? Getting information from government. And that's really important. And we set aside an entire effort to do that and to see if local governments were going to be responsive. And in doing that, we learned a lot. And I think to the point that the supervisor made about a comprehensive transparency evaluation, part of what we learned is it's not fair to just send one and say you're transparent or not. It's fair to say you responded or not. But if we're talking about steps to be fully transparent, you really need that broader evaluation. And when I think about our indicators on that specific question around FOIL, the first part is putting your name up there, the records access officer, records appeals officer, a phone number, an email. Those are really important processes in it. Then there's the other part where they actually have to respond. And part of what we want to do here, and the Long Island Press Club did a piece of this, is set the table so we can see, are they taking the steps to do this, right? This is the bare minimum. And then they actually have to embrace that culture of transparency where the town clerk is responsive when you put in information requests. But the last piece is citizens have to be responsible too. And this is something else that we've learned. There's frustration in local government, especially when you're talking about small villages, where they get some of these requests and it's almost physically impossible to respond in a decent amount of time. And the law provides for this. The law says that you have a certain amount of time to respond. And in cases where you need additional time, you can request a delay. And that's a really important process because we're not in the business of just overburdening local government. And we take that really seriously because we've had those accusations thrown against us. These are supposed to be thoughtful requests that add value to the public. And in cases where those requests come across that do that, great, and the town should be responsive. But there is a responsibility among citizens that needs to be upheld as well. Thank you. Ted, if I could go back to your question just for a moment. If I have a recommendation on how to evaluate the evaluation, it's looking forward. Our local government's taking steps to address the problems that they can fix. And so part of the discussions that came out with our team and the supervisor's team was that figuring out the potential accounting mess that may exist in the past is certainly hard work and is going to take time. But there are steps that they're committing to take to see how they can fix things going forward. And that starts with instituting business processes that track these things so they can be put online, then putting those things online. So what we encourage the town of Oyster Bay and all entities to do is to block it out, look at what can be tackled in the next 3 months, and request to be held accountable on those issues which are truly in their purview and which they truly do have control over. Because the reality of going back and fixing some of the accounting, systems that are, in some cases, we're finding systems from the 1980s are still being used around the state. It's exceptionally hard to get that data out to post that online in a machine-readable format. So what I encourage everyone to do to truly assess the current culture of transparency in these local government entities is to focus on what is within the purview of the public officials and make sure that they're taking those steps to fix what's doable.
Any other questions? Well, we'd like to thank Reclaim New York, Brandon Meir. We'd like to thank the staff of Reclaim New York. We'd like to thank those who visit the site, because clearly they understand that the town of Oyster Bay is very committed to continuing to take a leadership role. Today is a snapshot, a very important one, but it's just one snapshot on the long road my administration is taking to achieve total ethics, transparency, and doing the right thing in government. We are going to continue to strive for that. We'll be working with Reclaim New York and other entities. I want to thank my colleagues, including Councilman Lewin Brodo, all of the Oyster Bay Town Board, and our town clerk, who, quite frankly, has taken a leadership role in a large portion of this. We're proud of the town of Oyster Bay. We are proud of our valuation as being the leader in our state, and we are going to continue to strive to be that leader in transparency. And as everyone does their job to cover this, it will only motivate more municipalities to get on board. And we're talking about changing the culture as it relates to transparency and ethics statewide. And statewide, that's exactly what's been achieved in the town of Oyster Bay. Thank you so much. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you.
You do an awesome job.
Appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you. Brendan here. Yes.